As I start to squeeze on his neck and he tries to use his hands to defend, he's actually pushing my hand towards my other one. That's going to allow me to secure the grip, lock it, and then squeeze. All right, so what we're doing is moving on to a front headlock or a guillotine technique. I want to talk about how it's normally taught, and then I want to adjust some of the details on that so that you can have a tighter choke, I guess. The understanding that we are in the fundamentals portion of unarmed tactics allows us to work on techniques, refine them in areas that I don't have to really worry about whether or not he can either take me down or do something to counter. I'm just looking at how to apply this choke so that if I wanted to, I could render him unconscious. Now, traditionally, what happens is a guillotine is taught by driving your forearm directly underneath someone's jaw in a headlock position like so. And what happens is from that point, you are clasping your wrist right at you're clasping your wrist right here as it connects to the hand. What you would want to do from this point is drive your hips forward, pull directly in, roll your wrist up, and then arch your hips to apply pressure. What would happen is it would kind of look like this. I would start to lock this in. I would drive my hips forward, and then I would start to arch just like that, and then I would get my tap. Now, if he wanted to resist that or he wanted to raise up on his toes, it would relieve pressure. And you'll notice that by doing so, I have to arch a little bit more and it becomes really difficult. So what I want to do is take that same choke and refine it just a little bit. There is space when I start to arch. You'll notice that my shoulder is going back. My hips are driving into that choke there. But my shoulder, by going backwards, this space here stays the same as far as the area that's directly here. What I want to do is instead of pulling my shoulders back, I want to drive my shoulder down. When I drive my shoulder down, it's going to start to eliminate the space between my forearm and my shoulder. You'll also notice that by doing that, it doesn't completely destroy that area. So what I want to do is also apply pressure with my hip. So I'm going to take my hip, I'm going to move it to the inside, and I'm going to step just like that. And by doing so, it's going to move his head off to the side, and it's going to allow me to really torque on his neck. The last detail on this is I want to make sure that his shoulder does not interfere with my ability to squeeze or apply pressure. What I mean by that is arm goes directly around. Make sure that you clasp your hands together. This goes in front of the shoulders. Your ribs are actually driving his head across. So what I'm doing is I'm moving my body in front of the shoulders and then across here. You'll notice how that kind of tightens up. And then the last part of this is I drive my shoulder down and I squeeze up. My shoulder is driving down. Another way that you can look at this is like you're trying to put your head on his back. And what happens? So this goes 1, 2, and then 3. By doing so, when he drives his shoulder forward, I have a full wrap around his neck. And then to close this space off, I drive my shoulder down as I squeeze. And you'll notice that I don't have to arch my hips at all. I'm driving down. I'm squeezing to the side like this. And then I'm just locking in. So when you drive your arm directly forward, make sure that your hands are in front of the shoulder. What that does is it allows you to cut off both sides of the carotid arteries as you start to squeeze. Remember the principle that I talked about in the previous technique. You want 360-degree wrap around the neck. You do not squeeze until all of that space is eliminated. And then you want to compress all of that space directly around all at once. So once again, let's look at this again. I start to drive this across here. I want my body to drive his head in this direction. As all of this connects with my hands. So I go here, move, and then from that point, I drop my shoulder down and I get my choke. Once again, you can take the way that you were originally taught, compare it off of this. If this is already what you're doing, then obviously continue to do so. If it is a little bit different, just try to see if this makes it a little bit tighter. Once again, my end goal here is if he doesn't tap, I want him to go to sleep. I don't want him tapping because it's painful or it's elongating his neck. One of the things that's happening here is I am squeezing up and I'm driving across, but my shoulder is driving down. That is the one part or one detail of this that most people have a difficulty doing. And so make sure that you are only squeezing the musculature that you need to not only pull up, but drive your shoulder down. If you're enjoying this video, I want to take a second to talk about EliteU.com, where you'll be able to find early access to all of our YouTube content, as well as exclusive interviews and access to mentors. And now back to the video. One of the things that I like to apply is what my instructor, Carlos, would call troubleshooting. And basically what happens is we're doing the guillotine, but he is fully resisting. This could be in a grappling match if he goes for a single or a double and I sprawl out and I have his head. Or it could be from this standing position. It really doesn't matter. It works in both positions. So your hips are a little bit farther back. You're kind of sprawled out. But what I want to do is I want to stop him from being able to relieve pressure on his neck. So from this point here, I have my shoulder forward. My legs are kind of kicked back a little bit. My shoulder is down. And what I do is I grab his jaw. This is something where I clamp onto his body. So when he pulls, he's actually pulling against himself here. Whereas if this was just free floating here, he's actually going to be able to not only pull away, but drop his chin down. So the moment I get a clean grip, I want to clamp right onto his jaw. The other thing that I do is I find where his hand is, and I want to put it right on top. So if his hand's like this, I want to put my hand right on top of his wrist here. I'm not going here. I'm dropping this on top. The reason for that is as I start to squeeze on his neck and he tries to use his hands to defend, he's actually pushing my hand towards my other one. That's going to allow me to secure the grip, lock it, and then squeeze. This is just one of those things, just like in the rear naked choke, where I lock onto their trap as they squeeze, and then I break that grip and secure the figure four. It works when that person is resisting, and the more that they fight, or the faster they try to reach up, they're just feeding that directly in. And so that's the first detail. Second detail that I want to focus on is what is the primary counter that's taught in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and how is the details that I gave you going to prevent that or allow you to be in a better position than previously. So what happens is if I were to get into a headlock position, the first thing that's taught is destroying balance. So what he usually does is he's either pushing on the hip here, or he'll turn his palm up and drive that back so that my leg goes here. What that also does is it drops my shoulder to the point where he can wrap this around my shoulder and he starts to pull my shoulder down. By doing so, it stops me from actually lifting up here. If I lock the guillotine properly, or I lock the position properly, what you'll find is even if he pushes my leg back, I secure this, and as he starts to reach over the top, my shoulder's far enough back that he can't actually reach over my shoulder because I'm actually pulling this back here. You can do an elbow over position like this, and it completely blocks that position. The last part about this is the difference between sport application and real combatives or close combat. So this is a technique that we teach just because we understand the manipulation of the cervical portion of the spine and how to stabilize the shoulders. So meaning if I want to damage his neck, what I want to do is I want to stabilize the shoulder girdle as I start to manipulate his head. The best way to do that is to throw his body in one direction. All that said, when I go into this headlock position and he reaches over, if he successfully gets to this point, even if he pushes my leg back like this, my arm going over the top is going to be able to secure his shoulder. Just spin a little bit. So as he drives this back, what I'm going to do is I still have this jawline because that's how I normally grab. This arm goes right over the shoulder and I'm pressing down. What that does is it makes it difficult for him to raise that shoulder back up in this direction. I would step across, throw, and I would lift directly up on the jaw. This is a technique I'll detail a little bit later on in the basic section, but be very careful about what you practice because it may put you in a worse predicament than you previously were. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed that content, we have more videos over here for you to check out. For those of you looking to enhance your knowledge, make sure that you go over to eliteu.com, where you will have early release of YouTube videos and access to exclusive content. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.